name is Daniel, and I was once a desperate man with a desperate plan. A year ago, I found myself in dire straits, buried under a mountain of debt and facing eviction from my home. The weight of my financial troubles pressed down on me like a vice, and in a moment of sheer desperation, I hatched a plan that would haunt me for the rest of my days. It was a moonless night when I ventured to the old cemetery on the outskirts of town. My heart raced as I approached the tombstone I had marked earlier that day, a forgotten grave belonging to a man named Tobias Blackwood, who had died over a century ago. My trembling hands clutched the shovel tightly as I began to dig. The soil was cold and damp beneath my fingers, and each scoop felt like a betrayal of the dead. I couldn't believe what I was doing, but the specter of impending eviction and financial ruin loomed over me, urging me on. The ground seemed to resist my efforts, as if it knew the sin I was committing. After what felt like an eternity, I uncovered the lid of the coffin. My breath caught in my throat as I hesitated, staring at the dark abyss below. With a deep breath, I forced myself to continue, lifting the lid with a sickening creak. The stench of death and decay washed over me, and I gagged, my stomach churning. Inside the coffin lay the remains of Tobias Blackwood, his withered form draped in tattered clothing. My trembling hands reached for the object of my desire, a worn leather journal that was rumored to contain the location of a hidden treasure. This treasure was said to be cursed, and its dark history had frightened away all but the most desperate of souls. I was one of them. As I clutched the journal in my hands, a sudden chill swept over me, and I felt an icy breath on the back of my neck. I turned, but there was no one there. The wind whispered through the trees, and I told myself it was just my imagination. With the journal in my possession, I hastily resealed the coffin and covered my tracks as best as I could. The following days were filled with a mixture of guilt and anxiety. The stolen journal sat on my desk, its contents taunting me with the promise of untold riches and the dread of an ancient curse. I couldn't bring myself to open it, fearing what I might unleash, but the weight of my debts and the looming eviction pushed me to take that fateful step. With trembling hands, I opened the journal and began to decipher the cryptic notes within. They spoke of a hidden treasure buried deep in the heart of a forbidden forest, guarded by malevolent spirits and cursed souls. The more I read, the more I realized the gravity of my actions. I had unleashed a darkness far beyond my comprehension. The night I ventured into the forbidden forest was a nightmarish blur. The trees seemed to close in around me, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Strange sounds echoed through the darkness, and I could feel unseen eyes watching my every move. I pressed on, driven by a reckless determination to claim the cursed treasure and escape my impending doom. As I reached the heart of the forest, I saw it, an ancient moss-covered chest that radiated an eerie, otherworldly glow. It was the treasure I had sought, and it filled me with a mixture of greed and dread. With trembling hands, I opened the chest, revealing a trove of jewels, gold coins, and precious artifacts. But as I reached for them, the air grew cold, and a sinister presence descended upon me. A voice, ancient and filled with sorrow, echoed in my mind. It was the voice of the cursed souls who had guarded this treasure for centuries. They spoke of the suffering they had endured, the pain they had inflicted on those who dared to seek the riches, and the curse that would now consume me. I tried to flee, but the forest seemed to come alive, its trees twisting and contorting to block my path. The spectral figures of the cursed souls surrounded me, their eyes hollow and accusing. They whispered of my sins, my greed, and the darkness that had consumed my soul. In that moment, I knew there was no escape. I had unleashed a curse far more powerful than I could ever have imagined, and now it was exacting its revenge. I fell to my knees, begging for mercy, but there was none to be found. The cursed souls dragged me into the depths of the forest, where I would join their ranks as a guardian of the forbidden treasure. My fate was sealed, and I became just another ghostly figure, forever haunted by the grave I had robbed and the curse I had unleashed.